I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow.
And he's pedal to the metal. Go, go, go!
Welcome back. I was not expecting that. Welcome back to PSGL Tier 4, where we're heading into probably going to be one of the most boring races ever. And yes, I will be straight up and say it. We're heading to Monaco, so grab your pillows. We are here for the long run. Blankets and everything. As I'm joined by George, who already is prepared, apparently, to sleep.
Yes, sir. I have a teddy bear over on my bed as well, just in case I get a little bit lonely. It's quite likely. Companionship is always welcome in this bedroom. But as for this week, yeah, Monaco. Typically, a little bit of a snooze fest, I think we'll comfortably go ahead and say. So make sure that you are sitting comfortably. Maybe if you wanted, you could have a warm glass of milk and a cookie. And just get ready to have a cool, cozy winter night on the streets of Monaco. The only way in which this race becomes even remotely interesting is if it rains, which is possible. I have raced around Monaco in the wet. Qualifying is looking a little bit light on the ground here, though, Reese. We've only got 15 people in at present, so that should be interesting. If there are people joining, they might want to get in before the end of this session, because starting from the back, well, I don't think we need to rehash those old points, do we? Monaco is Monaco, and you never want to be starting from anywhere other than P1.
Absolutely. It's one of those tracks where it is just qualifying means it all. And talking of the track, just a reminder for those who are not familiar, it's a 2-mile circuit, one of the shortest on the calendar with 19 turns. And particularly, one of the largest elevation changes. There you go. Massive uphill from turn 19 all the way up to turn 4, where it peaks at about turn 5, where we see the highest of the of this track. And you can see, I don't know if it's just cut in, the steepness of the slope as Laminin is going on his outlap. Talking of the championship, this driver here, Laminin, topping the championship with 6 points ahead of Meyer currently in the McLaren.
That is spicy, isn't it? We do like it. It has to be at least a little bit spicy. Yeah, I was just double checking that everything was working on the stream there, but thankfully it all is. So we are up, ready, and running. Yeah, Laminin's been having a decent run of things. He's not really been a seasoned race winner thus far in this season, but he has always been there or thereabouts, consistently chipping away, picking up podiums, consistent finishes. A bit George Russell-esque in the way that he's been performing this season. It's not really been like too superlative, but it has been exceptional in the sense that it's consistent, which is far more than you can say for many of the other drivers on the grid. In this grid particular, I mean, Milan Meyer, for example, race winner 2 rounds ago, and then last time out in Canada, absolute stinker. It's so weird how things can change on the flip of a coin, really. The drop of a hat, all of a sudden everything can go wrong for your championship hopefuls. But like you said, it is a decent lead for the time being. Laminin comfortable, and just got to make sure he has a good performance here as well, because if there's anywhere where things are going to start to go wrong for you, it's going to be Monaco.
Absolutely. It's so easy to make a mistake with this track. One of the reasons why we describe this as probably the most boring race. You can physically see, we're on board with Patrick Hadler, you can see how narrow this circuit is, and the overtaking opportunity isn't great. So the mistake will come with the lack of focus, touching the wall, damaging your front wing, and particularly in a corner like this into the chicanes, it's very easy to lock up and just absolutely ruin your race.
Yeah, it really is. And also it's very easy to ruin somebody else's race here in the race too, if you decide to maybe get a little bit nosy with your front end in towards some of the potential overtaking opportunities. I mean, how many times have we seen it into Nouvelle Chicane where there's been somebody,
Speak of the devil.
Somebody in the way, somebody right where you don't want them. Or more than that, into Nouvelle, where you just take one another out, or even down into the casino hairpin and all sorts of stuff like that. Rascas has been a point before where there's been opportunities to just knock each other out of the race too. So you got to be careful and aware of these problems. And obviously, we're going to be seeing a lot of people getting in the way here in qualifying. To me, that Williams there did not have any perception of who was coming up on track. Wasn't paying any attention whatsoever, and I think we might be able to have a rinse and repeat maneuver of that just a little bit further up the track here if this McLaren doesn't get a move on. Rainbow's pitted in anyway. I think we're going to see a lot of that, a lot of aborted runs.
Yeah, I feel quite a few, and we saw Rainbow just tapping the edge of the wall of turn 7, the end of turn 16, so very easy place to make mistakes. As we saw, I think it was Sergio Perez nailing it to the dot. I think that was 2021 when he did that. The slow-mo. Oh, it's always a joy when you catch that angle and when you
I was wondering
that.
where you were going with that one, though, with Sergio Perez at Monaco, because I believe that's still a pretty contentious issue.
Oh, you do raise a good point. 2022, yes.
Did my man's intentionally crash?
Well,
Was
yes,
it
yes.
another
if you
PK
look at the
Junior?
track data indicates around this point, Thomas Gal is coming up to this point. This corner right here, he puts too much throttle on, and it's deliberate. It's not like a clear, subtle press. It was a full press. And you know what? I'm not gonna sit, and I don't like to point fingers. There clearly was some strategy on that one, but other times between the Red Bulls, no, it's pure racing. But that one was clear as daylight, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really tend to throw my hat in on controversial issues anymore. I learnt my lesson after Zandvoort, where people started saying that Yuki Tsunoda, speaking of AlphaTauris, people started saying that Yuki Tsunoda intentionally stopped on track and tried to bring out a safety car to assist Max Verstappen. I just at that point started calling people on Twitter mentally ill, and from that moment forth, I decided that I would not engage in any controversies like that ever again. So, I refuse to give opinions on this kind of thing anymore. It's just not worth it.
I fully understand that, and people who do turn around to say, you know, when you see stuff like that, 9 times out of 10, and I will say 9 times out of 10, it is a genuine mistake from the driver that causes, you know, the issue to arise. Now, of course, we will cast our mind back to Singapore. We have had those cases where, I think it was 2009, or was it 2008?
2008.
Saw the Renaults, you know, deliberately leaving a car, well, making one crash, and that then ended up for Renault being banned. I think it was for 5 years. So there are cases. And I'm not going to sit here and say F1 is perfect. It's that, you know, you're not going to see any of this match fixing. It happens everywhere. Even in cricket, there is match fixing. And there is a very clear case, I can't remember the names of the people, where the guy bowled 3 overs. It happens everywhere. There is going to be some idiot who's going to bribe somebody and they're going to go, yeah, we'll take the bait and mess up their career.
Shout out to my boys at iBuyPower for that one.
That is very true. iBuyPower and
had to put one out there for our Counter-Strike boys.
Yeah, how Skadoodle did not get caught up in that and goes and
I
wins
can
a
tell
major.
you how. I can tell you how.
Well, apparently didn't accept the skins, so
didn't receive them. It was a case that they would come in, but they just didn't have them at the time, and then the investigation dropped, and Skadoodle was like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that."
Yeah.
So I'm glad at least someone had a conscience about it.
Yes.
Either way, lifetime ban probably not the best.
Yeah, not the best, but now look at him, major winner, and I was wearing the jersey just prior. But back to F1.
Winner and washed. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of washed, here's me commentating.
He made it to the pro scene. He made it to the pro scene. Now he's back to amateur.
Yeah, that's all I needed to be. Anyway, Rishan here currently leads the way by quite a considerable margin. This is a bit similar to what we saw last week, if you recall. I believe it was Thomas Gal who had a big margin last week at Canada. Very slidey on the rear for everybody exiting Rascas and coming onto the front straight. I've seen that a couple of times. It is a difficult traction zone. Often you have to get up to as far as maybe even 4th, 5th gear if you're feeling extra fruity or you've got the minimum apex speed. You can make 5th work. That's a clean run on there. But yeah, 4th gear out of that corner is generally your best option. You don't really drop any lower than 4th on many exits on this track either. You want to be looking at 3rd or 4th gear pretty much everywhere apart from Casino, because obviously you need the rotation in that corner, otherwise you can't do it. These 22 F1 cars are like driving a boat at low speed by all accounts, and around that corner particularly, you are going to need as much rotation as possible, so having first gear there is necessary. But most of these other corners, you don't want to be going any lower than third or fourth gear.
No, you really don't, and I think, if I remember rightly, back in the days where they had the actual shifters, you know, physical sticks, most of the drivers spent, I think they said statistically 89% of the race one-handed around this track. So they do shift quite a lot in this track, particularly as you mentioned in those lower gears. So we are going to be seeing a multitude of gear changes and possibly more mistakes because of the number of gear changes as well. Get one gear wrong, too much throttle in the wrong gear, you're going to send yourself spinning.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I just had a little quick Google search. There is going to be, there's going to be 50 gear changes in a lap, which amounts to apparently almost the estimates. Okay, these are the varying estimates, but apparently the one that I'm reading here says that over the course of a 78 lap race, a driver will make up to 5,000 gear changes because there is such little downtime on this circuit. A lot of it is also coming into your right foot here at this track, especially on the F1 game, because the cars can be so twitchy with power delivery. You need to be very, very careful with how you apply the throttle. And that is really where all the time is to be found on this track. It's getting into the corner well, digging for the minimum apex speed to come in nicely, and then making sure that you are smooth on the traction, because there's so many opportunities for you to clart into a wall. As speaking of someone who did clart into a wall earlier, Gal, who ruined his first attempt. His second attempt, though, has seemingly been much better. He has now got himself within just a few hundredths of a second of Rishan's previous best lap of a 109.291, with just a 3.33 as his tally. So this is starting to bunch things up a little bit. Istvan Nagy is slotted in third as well, which is the wrong McLaren for what we've seen so far this season. The championship protagonists are starting to come to play a bit here.
Gal could have actually taken pole here. He had a really terrible exit at the turn of 19. Rear end kicked out massively, and it lost him probably that 0.041 of a second. So there is potential that we might see a new pole sitter today. But Rishan, as mentioned, holding his own. Jerry Van Bussel keeping himself nicely in fourth as well, so putting himself near the top. Patrick Hadler in the points, so that's someone new. Rainbow, again, he's also in the points. He's doing well. I think Rainbow, he's been out of the points for the last few races. I'm just double checking. Yeah, he's not been in the points at DNF, in Netherlands, Bahrain, didn't get any points. But now he's sitting himself in 10th. That's a potential opportunity for himself.
Yeah, it is. Got to make sure that you kind of get as much as you can out of it. Rainbow, I think, started this season as a reserve driver, and as such now is, I think he's gone to full-time. I'd hope he has at least, because he has been in relatively consistent attendance.
Nope, still reserve.
Still reserve. Okay, well, I mean, there's something to be said for that, I suppose. Either way, you got to be doing what you can. Get yourself that full-time seat. I think that's got to be the ultimate objective, doesn't it, really? That's what you got to think about.
Yeah, but sorry, I was just going to jump in there. If he's like reserve 1, then he's got no problems, because there's always somebody not in a full-time seat.
That is true, to be fair. So if he's always first in the party, then he'll be all right, and typically has generally been here quite often, either in iterations of himself, Rainbow, or your mum, whichever you prefer. But Rishan here has just slotted it in at the top of the timing screens again with an even faster lap this time, a 1:69. There we go. So 1:09.169. But even better than that, we're going to have the final couple of runs starting now from everybody. I think Jerry Van Bussel at the moment on a pretty decent lap. It looked a bit messy up through Beau Rivage and Massenet, but now coming around to the Grand Hotel section and down in towards Portiere in the tunnel. It's looking decent so far. I haven't seen the rear stepping out too much or having any major contacts with the barrier. Keeping the wide entrance in, it's all very clean for the time being. Now, Nouvel is a big time gainer, and there's a lot of curb that you can actually take there. And he does exactly that, manages to negotiate it well. A little squirrely on the exit of Nouvel. Now into Tabak, got to keep the speed up, has done so. Now flying it through the swimming pool section Everybody knows it. Everybody quite likes it. Raskas now, but it's all invalidated. It's all in vain. He'll dive into the pits to strap a new set of softs on, inevitably, to go again next time around. Straight out, I'd imagine, for him to try and avoid the traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. He wants to go straight out, try and get himself one last run as we head to just under 4 minutes. Well, yeah, about to hit 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And Schumacher is not on a positive lap. Let's see what he gets through the Delta time, but it was a positive as he went through. No, he's got his lights on, so he's backing off for the moment. Who is on a lap? It's Thomas Gal. I think he's improved. Has he done
I think he's just starting one.
Just starting one. Well,
yes.
we could stick with him and just keep an eye on what he does. As Thomas Gal, he's closest contender to taking pole today, as he does keep a nice tight-ish line now to the hairpin. This is the slowest section on the track, and actually F1 cars have to have a different steering wheel, and they would actually take that corner in first gear naturally, but as you can see from the steering wheel, he was taking it in third. So a lot of these drivers are taking higher gears just to maintain traction and not spin this car out.
Also taking higher gears to maintain minimum apex speed, but what you do sacrifice with that is mid-corner stability by not having the right gear, and you saw that there on the exit of Nouvelle. It's ended up costing him quite a fair amount. I'm not sure whether he did back out of the lap early or not, because he's lost 0.6 of a second, and third gear around the hotel just doesn't seem right. He's going to go straight into the pits, and that means that now all 16 drivers are going to be attempting their final runs momentarily. You've got his teammate, Andre Molnar, heading out of the pit lane now, up towards Beau Rivage, but you've got everybody else starting to think about doing their laps or starting them at some point soon. Istvan Nagy is going to be the first person to slot in his final lap. He's just exiting the swimming pool chicane now, and will shortly be entering Raskas and Anthony Nose. So this will be the run for the McLaren driver, who's had a bit of a disappointing season so far, massively overshadowed by his teammate Milan Mayer for the most part in this season, in this division so far. So we'll have to see what he can get up to, Reese. It's a squirmy exit off the start of Saint-Devant, but up Beau Rivage, keeping the line nice and tight. Now going to try and hold it into Massenet. You want to try and carry as much speed as possible, but it naturally pushes you wide. We've seen crashes into the barrier on the outside there, now down towards into Casino and Mirabeau Bass and all this kind of great section with the Grand Hotel hairpin. It's fantastic. It's very slow speed, slowest on the calendar pretty much, and now just trying to send it through, not Sergio Perez's way out onto the tunnel. Keep it nice and tight. There's no David Coulthard or anybody in the way for Schumacher to crash into, and so Istvan Nagy now coming down towards the Nouvelle chicane. We'll have to see where his delta's at. That is a huge track cut, though. Could not get the car slowed down enough. And as such, he's going to have to back off and try and get some battery behind him if he wants to go for another run. That is a crash, I believe, from Andre Molnar. I'm not quite sure what happened.
Milan Mayer's backed out of his lap as well. So Mayer not having the greatest of days. You can see him slowly going around the corner. He needs to be careful. I think that's Tripkov coming through, so he needs to stay out of the way. Here's Tripkov. Has he backed out? He has.
I feel like he has.
Yeah, you can see the rear lights flashing, so he's had to back out of the lap. And just to let you know, I believe through rulings, as Rashan's going to go for one more attempt, through rulings, if you block, you actually have to, you'll be getting a qualifying ban. If I am not mistaken.
Depends how egregious the block is, I suppose. Rishan started this lap very, very late in terms of acceleration, so he's going to be lacking as it comes up
Jerry
to
Van Bussel has no front wing.
That is not great. Andre Molnar, I think, dropped his up at Mirabeau, if I'm not mistaken, or Casino, I think. Dropped it on the outside wall. That wasn't a great look, and obviously Jerry Van Bussel has done something not too dissimilar. Sven Schumacher's lap time is looking peachy, or was at least when he came over the line, but it's not really going to be enough. So I don't know whether this is a cooldown lap for him or not. It's very hard to tell, but he is sending it. He is sending it at the moment. And also, Thomas Laminin down in 10th at present. Oh, never mind. Sven Schumacher has done exactly the same thing that Andre Molnar just did. So let's not get it too twisted. That is him out of qualifying now. So back on with Thomas Laminin, I suppose. What's up with him? Well, coming down to Nouvelle, where are we at in terms of lap time? Oh, he's tagged the wall. He's tagged the wall with the rear right. That's going to be his session over. He's going to start from 10th at best. Milan Mayer is going to start from 15th at best. It's a bit of a shuffled qualifying session here, Reese.
Yeah, Thomas Gal. Oh, Thomas Gal's in the water back. Oh, it was looking good. It was looking positive, but that's gone out the window as well. Who is on a lap? It's Van Nage. He's improving on his lap. He's got a bit of work to do. Anyone else? Has Rainbow got anything on his lap time? He is technically going to improve round Raskas. It's not major, though. So can he nick a couple more positions?
Oh, no, he can't.
Oh, a bit of an odd place to find himself spinning. And the car is left on track. Luckily, it's crossed the line, so we're all good. Back to Itzvan. What has Itzvan got? His only small improvements, and he needs to find a 10th, really, to gain another position. Round the final corner he goes. What has he got? Is it enough to push him up a couple of positions? No, he does not. So he'll stay where it is. And there you go, ladies and gents. That is qualifying and probably the most entertaining segment of the Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Well,
I got to tell you, it was entertaining as well, Reese. The amount of crashes and mistakes that were being made on those final runs, the drivers were leaving everything on the line. But one person who did make some serious improvements in that final run, Andrew Karapi, big shout out to the American, managed to make his way up to 7th position, was previously before that sitting down in, I think, about 14th or something like that. Managed to get his way up, and also that knocks Thomas Laminen outside of the top 10 too for starting qualifying position. So seriously, strong performance. But some of our previous frontrunners, Milan Mayer, Bartos Samaro, Andre Molnar, Thomas Laminen, all qualifying outside of the top 10 here at Monaco. It's going to be a tough day at the office for the Alfa Romeos and the McLaren. So this is going to have to be a lot of work to be done. I mean, I've seen it done. I've seen overtakes happen, but they have to be clean. You have to ensure that they are done cleanly and nicely. Otherwise, it'll be good night curtains and the rest of the race over for you and the person you overtake.
That is very true, but I have had a word with the drivers. I said, look, guys, I do want to see overtakes. I do want to see some action, so entertain us. And as the commentator would, as your race engineer would say in your ear, no heroics into Sandevot, please. Absolutely, we want heroics into Sandevot.
We absolutely do. Give me the Mahavir Raghunathan line if you're feeling really spicy.
The what line?
The Mahavir Raghunathan line.
Elaborate.
Are you not familiar with the legend that is Mahavir Raghunathan, the worst driver ever to touch a Formula 1 car?
Oh, was it only 3 races? One was did not start, and then 2 of them he ended up DNFing.
No, he never actually raced. He just tested. But in his junior Formula career, he decided to take a very interesting interpretation of what Turn 1 at Monaco means. So you know the pit lane exit that cuts across the inside of Sandevot?
Yeah.
Well, while everybody else is bumping and grinding in towards Sandevot, he goes, you know that corner? I don't think it should be there, and just cleans off.
Yep, that sounds like most drivers in a nutshell. As you can see the numbers heading down to 0. There are lights on our screen. We are gonna get the action we want in Monaco. If we're gonna get action, as there's a drive-through penalty for Andrew Quatry for jumping the line off the get-go, but it's going to be Rashan who gets a good start, but actually the Alpine also getting a good run. No heroics into Sandevot though, so everything is safe and clean, and no drivers really mounting to too much risk. The next place where we're going to get some action is the Hotel Hairpin. Who's going to be the first to really make a move? Here we go. This is the camera you want to see. As you can see down the inside, that's the Alfa Romeo down the inside.
That's a crash, I think.
Yep, that's Carafalusis bumping into Jerry Van Bussel. I think Jerry Van Bussel's still holding that position as well, so well done to him for not losing out.
It actually got worse.
It's gotten 10 times worse. Look at this.
It got worse.
They're side by side. Side by side, going into the chicane, and
this is bad.
It's the Williams of Rainbow is going to hold his position. No, sorry, Patrick Hadler going to hold his position. It's Sven Schumacher overtaking further up.
Yeah, this has been moving at the top of this field. Obviously, Andrew Karapi going to have to take that drive-through penalty with the next 3 laps. I think for the time being, wants to just try and stick at it for a minute. Obviously, you want to get as good a start as possible here at Monaco, and it seems that for Andrew Karapi, he thought, yeah, well, you know that good start that I wanted? How about I just start before everybody else does? And as such, It has been moving. Let's just take a quick look, by the way, at the tyre situation. There is a bit of variance here for people. We've got Istvan Nagy down to Miltos Karafilidis all on the hards. You then have Patrick Hadler on the mediums, Laminan on the hards. And then, aside from that, it's Jirofu on the hards too. Everybody else is on the mediums. Rishan, Menno, Gal, Karapi, Tripkov, Schumacher, all on the mediums, making that good start. And as such, you'll start to see them pull away. You don't want to give any DRS, but at the same time, if you're going to get stuck behind somebody on different tyre compounds to you, this would be the track to keep them behind on.
Oh, Rishan's gone straight.
Is that Rishan?
Yeah, Rishan's gone straight. So that's going to allow Menno to open up an opportunity. But to back, being that awkward corner that it is, not going to allow Menno to get ahead. Rishan's got internet problems.
Yeah, he has. He's disconnected for me completely. I don't know what's happening.
He has on my screen as well. So he has got genuine internet problems. That's going to allow Menno to take the lead of the race. He just needs to get past the Ghost. And there he has. He has got the lead of the race. Menno has done it.
He has indeed, and that's now going to allow Tamas Gal to come into the picture. Rishan now relegates himself down another position until he gets back into this lobby. He's going to have some serious work to do. He had over a second lead too. That's a horrible thing to happen. A disconnect, obviously never fun. And now you're going to see Jane Tripkov start to get it in the action. You're going to have Sven Schumacher overtaking him shortly. And then you get back towards the hard runners. So they might not close in just as quickly, but the AI doing a decent job of defending for the very least. It's hard to drive through a ghosted car, believe me when I say that, because you just can't really see where you're going. You miss your braking points, all that kind of stuff. And on a track like Monaco, it becomes even more dangerous because you want to be so aware at all times, and it just doesn't quite happen. Anyway, back up to the front of the field. This is closed up a little bit. Tamas Gal, through Nouvelle, was really sniffing that gearbox of Menno in front. This is going to be a race of attrition, I feel. Already we've seen incidents. Andrew Karapi, of course, the victim of that jump start penalty, and now has a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings of track limits. So what goes from bad only gets worse for the Red Bull driver.
Yeah, and people would think, oh, how the hell do you get time penalties on this track? It's the chicanes. It's very easy, seems as there's no real barriers on the chicane, so you can easily cut over, and especially when you're trying to push and close what is a 5-second gap, it never works out. It never does. But we talk about Tamas Gal being very close to the Alpine. That's dropped back nearly a second already. But the question I have to ask is, how close do you need to be to overtake? Because in my eyes, I would say you'd have to be coming out the exit of this corner here. I would say you have to be about 3/10 behind to really mount an overtaking opportunity into the chicane ahead.
Arguably even closer, to be honest. It is difficult to find overtakes at this point, and more than anything, it just comes to having better traction and a good run. You can be side by side going into Nouvelle, for example. You can be side by side down the front straight in towards Saint-Devote, but if you do end up going too wide into the corner, who's going to have the better traction? Generally, the car that is on the outside, as long as they don't get completely squeezed into the wall. So you've just got to take and pick and choose your battles where you can. If I'm Tamas Gal, the one thing that I'll be looking to do moving forward here might just be the undercut, knowing full well that Menno won't be able to get past me if he doesn't have a significant pace advantage. I have the authority now when it comes to the pit stop window to just pit when I please. And of course, Menno has to react, but can't react as quickly because he's the one in front.
Absolutely. Rishan, his ghost has dropped him down to P11 right now, and it's only getting worse. He's not been able to join back in the game. No notification of it. So we are keeping an eye. There we go, P12 now. So from what was an absolutely sterling lap, it's just become not great as Andrew Crappy retires in the pit lane. He's pulled the plug. When you have a 3-second this early, yeah, it can really, make you feel bad, but there is potential as a safety car. This track is known. Actually, I think if I remember rightly, statistically speaking, this track has had a safety car every year for the past, when was the time when we didn't have safety cars? That's when we haven't had one here. Because everyone makes a mistake. It is so easy. And the drivers have said, and real F1 drivers have said, this track will punish you for just a millisecond of non-focus. Just a millisecond.
It's so draining to race around here for 39 laps. Heaven knows how they do it in real life for for 78 laps. It's head messing. I was going to say a different word there, but you get the picture. It is just mind-boggling the amount of concentration and focus that you need to have in order to complete a full race around Monaco without making any mistakes. And often you can make little ones, but the room for error is so unbelievably small, with the walls feeling like they're closing in on you at all times, whizzing past you, sponsor boards that you can't see as you travel down the straight at 170 miles an hour plus. And of course, you're trying to take and maximize every last bit of track that you can. You're trying to maximize every bit of curb, every bit of track limit, every bit as close to the wall as you dare. And as such, that only increases the risk exponentially every last time that you do it. So it's just such quite an enigma of a track. It's so special in the sense that it just demands more from the drivers than any other track really does.
Yeah, and talking about being a very significant track, as Jerry Van Bussel was pitting very early. Did that man have
I'm
damage?
going to guess, is this a retirement or damage?
One of the two. If you're able to get an eye on that, we would be very thankful. As
Yeah, I'll do what I
Andrew
can.
Molnir is the one putting some pressure on. But as I was going to say, this track holds a lot of heritage. This is why this track is on the calendar. It's been around for a very long time, and many historical and memorable moments have come out of it. As we're watching Molnir. Molnir is getting really pushy, and I'm just going to actually talk about this, as he is extremely close to the Alpine driver, and I think he is ready to mount a move. He's 4 tenths behind, so a little further back from what we're saying, but just does not get the exit. Back to my point about the history of this track. There's been many great moments. You know that there is still a missing $3 million diamond somewhere in the Monaco
from the
track.
front of a Jaguar. Yeah.
Yes, there is. It's somewhere out there. It's still out there. Also, the amount of stories from strategy, because this track predominantly is a strategy-based track. Ricciardo being robbed. Also, Bottas having the world's longest pit stop. I think it was turned out to be, what was it, 3 hours? I think they said.
I think it was more than that. I think they had to wait a day to get it off. I'm not totally sure. I can't remember the exact number, but either way, yeah, you are right. Lots of history around this track, even in recent years. Lots of memorable moments. But I think let's just siphon back in for a minute on the esports side of things here. Van Bussel did indeed have damage and is now on the medium tyres, 19 seconds behind the rest of the field. That's not ideal. I think Rishan is back in and driving now, so we'll see what progress Rishan can make. Obviously, like you've said, it's not over until it is in fact over, but I'm interested to see what's going to be happening around this track with regards to battery usage. We speak about it week on week, Reese. Battery usage is exceptionally important, and on a track where you need as much speed as you can in order to get an overtake done because they're so hard to come by, battery usage is going to be really important, because ERS recovery, I've got to be honest, it isn't great around this track. Reason being, there's not a lot of high-speed braking zones. Your braking distances are all quite short because you never really get up to be fast enough to have a really high-speed braking zone to recover much of that battery back. So really, you got to use it sparingly and hold on to it. There's not much recovery going on around here.
No, and it is very annoying, especially for drivers, especially for the esports guys, because of that reason. But we could bring this to real F1 again. Not enough battery. We're seeing the problems. They always moan about it. But one thing to note, I think if I remember rightly, this is very tire inducing as well, because of the swooping corners. There's a lot of braking that does happen, and especially in corners like the Nouvelle chicane, you can so easily lock up, and that damages and affects your tires dramatically on this track.
Oh, we've seen it before, haven't we? We've seen lockups into that corner time and time again, some of which have been race-ending, collision-causing, tyre flat spotting. It's happened many a time. And just even in recent examples, it's 2019, if I'm not mistaken, with Verstappen and Hamilton. That was one example of it, making an overtake. It's just been lots of those. And it's not always just into that corner as well. Obviously, you've got a lot of downhill braking zones here, and when you go braking downhill, you can often have the front of the car going a little bit light, which means that you end up having more lockups. So you've got in towards Casino is downhill braking just here. Also on traction, it's very slippery because the front wants to bite and the rear doesn't. Same again here up into Mirabeau. That's a sequence of corners, and now here at the Grand Hotel hairpin too. You got a lot of downhill braking. This entire section is downhill braking. Thankfully, it's not really fast enough to cause too much of an issue unless it's into Mirabeau. But yeah, especially down in towards the harbour as well. This particular corner into the Nouvelle. Downhill braking, front goes light, you get the lockup, you crash, your brakes fail, whatever the hell it is if you're Charles Leclerc, something's going to go wrong. And yeah, it's the danger of the circuit. There's lots of different ways this circuit can catch you out. It's not all about the walls. As much as everybody talks about the walls being the problem, in the F1 esports side of things, it's track limits. You've also got the lockup potential. You've also just got the attrition of the car. It's tough on the gearbox. It's tough on the wear. You're making, what was it, 5,000 shifts, over 5,000 shifts in a race distance. That's horrendously extensive on a gearbox. Lots of damage and wear done to that. And as such, you can have a number of problems, some of which can occur in the F1 esports side of things too.
Absolutely, it is enduring. Do you want to have a fun fact?
Go on then.
So, if you remember, good old Jim Clark, he was a 1963 to 1965 racer who won 2 world championships in Formula 1. He qualified in Monaco 4 times on pole position, yet he never won here.
Yes, I believe that's a bit of a statistic actually with regards to Monaco. Often it is the person who starts second, in fact, that ends up getting more wins here, I think.
And speak of the devil, Menno, hello.
Yeah, Menno, true form, true to the law on this one. Second position generally is quite successful, as much as many people say, oh yeah, first place is the best place to be, obviously. Goes without saying you want to be on pole position, but it seems to be one of those things where the pressure of it can cause issues. And here is, now referring back to a little seed that I sowed at the start of this race, is this Tomascal now triggering the undercuts to try and get those places on Menno up front, or is it just that he's ascertained some wing damage and is now going to go and replace
it's
that?
Wing damage, yeah. It's wing damage. We've been watching it, and that was a lot longer of a pit stop. And Tomascal, that's not good news for him.
No, that actually pretty much writes him out of a podium at this point. Providing there are no further issues up front, that pretty much does write him out of it. Because that front wing change turns a 2.2 second stop into ultimately about a 7.8 second stop. So that's 5 seconds or 5.5 seconds worth of time that he's ultimately lost here. And as such now, that I don't know where that will bring him out. Hopefully ahead of Rainbow, maybe ahead of Istvan Nagy, I'm not quite sure. But whichever way you slice it, not ideal for Tomascal unless other people have to take wing damage changes as well.
Yeah, not helpful at all, as the mid-pack is still keeping close to one another. So from Rainbow, you've got Cara Felitas, you've got Patrick Hadler, Thomas Lamin, all close to one another, all within that second, so they can actually capitalise on the DRS.
Wait,
and
Menno pit?
Has Menno got tricked into thinking that was an undercut? Has Menno reacted a bit too early to counter off a pit stop that really won't affect him?
Well, maybe. But at the same time, Molnar has also pitted too off the medium tyres, so maybe this is just the changeover point. Monaco is a pretty abusive track on tyres, especially in F1 esports, because you are constantly scrubbing them. You are over-rotating the car into a lot of these corners, especially under braking. You're doing a lot of turning, trail braking at the same time, and that always wears the inside tyre under braking. So maybe that is the case. Maybe the hard tyres do stick around for much longer. We are about a third of the way through the race now, so it's not improbable that this is where the mediums fall off.
Probably is, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens, as we're going to see Jane Tripkov. He's the current driver in first at the moment. He was about a second behind the rest of the pack. He's going to stay out. Is it going to be Sven Schumacher, his teammate? Yes. So Sven is going to go to pit. So maybe you're right. I think we are in that situation where we are at that crossover. Or it was a case that Tomascal just triggered a massive pit stop phase. And no, it's wing damage. Again, a front wing change.
maybe it is the case that all of these drivers have just a bit of a damaged end plate, and they're all going to come in for front wing changes. At the moment, we're going to see Thomas Laminen coming into the pits too for the medium tyres, actually. That's odd. He was on the hards. He must have wing damage too. Bartos Samaro will inherit some places. Andre Molnar comes back out as well. This is an interesting one. It could be the case that a lot of these drivers are persevering with minor wing damage until their pit stop, and then holding out with that wing and getting it changed when they do eventually come into pit on their natural pit cycle. Or maybe it is the case that in this one, Gal came in before the pit cycle just so he could get it sorted and maybe make up some ground. Same answer for Schumacher. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see, but I just want to make sure that Jane Tripkov has a tissue nearby because he might get a nosebleed from being up this high. This is the highest position he's been all season. It's looking good for him at the moment. He's ran a clean race thus far, and now he dives into the pits too. Is there a front wing waiting for him? No, there is not. He's kept his nose clean so far this race, and that means that he should inherit a position or two up the front of the field here. So Jane Tripkov, in fine form, comes out behind Menno, but ahead of Gal, so has inherited second place.
He has, and well done for keeping your nose clean, because now he's in contention to really try and close down the gap. You know, fresh air. Menno has a bit of fresh air as himself, and that will allow drivers to put in some faster pace, either close or gain a gap on a couple of drivers. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that, as I think I just saw Lamin overtake Hadler. It was on the timing screen on track.
It's not impossible. He is the only driver currently on the medium tyres, and they have had a lap to get in. So Laminen might be making up a fair amount of time with the mechanical grip that these tyres offer him, but I don't think there's any way in which he can get these mediums to the end. So if he is going to have to go for this strategy, he's really, really going to have to push them, make up as much ground as he can, and then pit onto another set of mediums, I think, later on.
Yeah, Calafalucius, that is such a complicated name. Miltos, going into the pits, has he got a front wing waiting? We're going to stick with him, see where he comes out, because Meadow goes past. He was running... No, he's kept his nose clean, so brilliantly well done from him. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
well,
it made it a bit more interesting.
So now both Alfa Romeos, Laminen and Karafalidis, are both out on the medium tyres. They're the only drivers on track at present to be on one. We have 3 drivers who are yet to make a pit stop. That is Jerafu at the front, that is Rainbow, and that is Istvan Nagy. They're going to be going as long as they can on those hard tyres and seeing what they can make happen. As for the rest of the field, Tomas Gal is currently putting in some rather lightning pace. He set back-to-back fastest laps of the race and is now within 1 second of Jane Tripkov in front. He's got some making up to do, of course, after that mistake earlier on with the front wing change. Went in earlier, Menno didn't have to change his wing, and now Menno is clearing off a little bit. And Tripkov isn't really making many inroads into closing that gap down, despite the fresher tyre life. Of course, he's had to get those tyres to come in a little bit. Obviously, take a little bit of time to heat up. But with no battery either for Tripkov, that red light flashing, it's not really likely that he's going to be making this gap up to Menno unless he has some really stellar driving that he can pull off.
Yeah, definitely indeed. And it's going to be interesting what he can do, as Menno is possibly... I think Menno could probably actually get the second overtake on track, bar the start. Let's see if Menno is going to be brave and bold enough, as he's going to head round to the Hotel Hairpin that has had many names in the past. Was originally called the Station Hairpin, and is one of the slowest corners, about 48 kilometers an hour, which in what's that in miles an hour? Ridiculously
That's like
slow.
25 mile an hour.
Yeah, it is ridiculously slow, but Menno not close enough on this lap, so might not get an opportunity here to overtake, but he will want to overtake as quickly as possible. This is a lapped car, well, not necessarily lapped, it is for position, but a car you don't want to be stuck behind for too long. And the best opportunity at the moment is into Saint Devot or into the Nouvelle Chicane. Or happen. Yeah,
they are your overtaking hotspots for sure, and you don't want to be kept behind a driver that is on a different strategy for you for as long as you can. You're just going to hold one another up, so don't be surprised if you see Jirofu here, just let him go. That hasn't happened, though. And as such, what we've seen in this last lap is Jane Tripkov has made some massive inroads into this gap with Menno. Of course, he's inevitably going to encounter the same problem with Jirofu if Jirofu doesn't pit just yet. But either way, that has been, what, nearly 1.2 seconds worth of time made up in just that last lap alone for Tripkov. And now he is within touching distance of Menno in front. Menno is going to want to clear this Mercedes as soon as he possibly can. He is on 5-lap old hards. These are 17-lap old hards ahead of him. The time difference between the two is just going to be astronomical. The braking performance is going to be so different as well. The traction performance. And if he can't utilize the freshness of his tires to try and get a gap on Tripkov behind, it leaves him vulnerable. And currently Menno is acting like a Haas driver in disguise, just leaving himself out on track, acting as a roadblock and allowing Tripkov to join the party here.
See, if Jirofu, oh, he does pit. I was going to say, if he had pitted, this would be brilliant, but he hasn't. And Tripkov, has he put himself within the second? He has. And Thomas Gao has ridden up the rear end of Tripkov as well. So 2 drivers now put threat on what was a good lead of Menno. The only driver left who has not pitted is Rainbow, who has not scored a point this season. So, and he's going to be closing down fast. And I would be worried if my name is Rainbow.
Yeah, well, I think Rainbow's kind of racing his own race at this time. Like, he knows that he's not in contention with the drivers behind here. So he's going to try and take these tyres as long as he can and then see if he has a pace advantage towards the end of the race when everybody else on those hard medium tyres are going to be just spent. If they're going to try and make these mediums last to the end, if they're going to try and make these hards that they're on at the moment last to the end, they are going to be spent, absolutely spent by the end of the race. And I think Rainbow knows that. And he's obviously a reserve. He's got nothing to lose. He can just go for this as much as he wants, and he's entitled to do so. He doesn't have to get out of the way for Menno just because they're on different strategies. That's not part of the picture here. So Rainbow just races his race, goes yet another lap on these hard tyres, by the way, making them last, making them live, and he's going to have an absolutely frantic sprint-like dash on the mediums towards the end of the race.
I wouldn't be surprised, you know, and I've mentioned it time to time. If you're not going to sit with the flow, you're going to be the driver that's going to take a risk. Why not push for the soft tyres at the end? You know, we're on lap 20. There's, what, 19 laps to go. He can survive, what, another 7 laps. You could make an extended stint on the softs.
Yeah, I would argue that would be good on probably any other track. Because the longer he stays out on these hards, the more time and positions, inevitably in terms of net position, he ends up losing. So as such, you've got to think of it that way. Overall, Rainbow could do that strategy, but it would be very, very difficult to overtake people. Of course, it's naturally difficult to overtake people here as well, even with the tyre compound difference. So, sure, an option. Whether he'll go for it, I'm not so sure. But speaking of soft tyres, Milan Mayer has just left the pits on them. I'm going to assume that he has sustained yet more damage to his car, and as such is now going to be circulating on the soft tyres.
Milan Mayer, currently P2 in the championship, down in 14th. It's like me and every other track, you know, I can hold my own. Even Baku, I can hold my own on that track to a degree, mostly at the back. But this one, absolutely no hopes. I just do not get the grips of this track. I don't like it. It's too narrow. And as mentioned earlier, one single lack of concentration and you're into the wall. And it's so easy to do. Hence why we've seen a couple of drivers with wing damage. And, you know, even the best of the best, which Tier 4 is very high up and very, very well-respected drivers, will make those mistakes, much as Milan Mayer is demonstrating today.
Yeah, I've got to say, Monaco is actually one of my favorites in terms of driving on this game. I actually really like it. If you get it, the only reason I say that is because if you get it absolutely right, like inch perfect on a lap, it feels better than any other track to do that on.
Oh yeah, the feeling's good, and you know, when you nail, and when I do nail a good lap in Monaco, I am ecstatic. But it's nailing that lap is a pain in the backside.
It is.
I'd be much more satisfied of nailing the Suzuka S's than I would on the Monaco track entirely, because at least the Suzuka S is of one small section that you can practice over and over again a lot easier than trying to do the whole track and being frustrated because the walls are too narrow. It's not a racetrack. I don't want it on the calendar. And
honestly, it sounds like a learn to play issue. Just get better at the game.
Oh, I know I'm terrible. I ended up in a tier that was, they needed to make another tier lower than me, but they didn't have one. That describes the situation I was in.
Well, sometimes it do be like that. And currently, it be like that for Rainbow. He is doing whatever he can at the moment in order to just extend this stint. He does have about 25% battery remaining, which is exactly the same as Menno behind him too. So I think we'll probably see Rainbow coming into the pits this lap or the next. If he doesn't, and maybe there is a chance. Oh, Menno with 3 seconds. Oh, that changes the complexion of almost everything to do with this race. Rainbow not coming in right now. Maybe he is extending for these softs, who knows? But right now, Menno with that 3-second time penalty has just given the net race lead to Jane Tripkov. Wow.
That's assuming Tripkov doesn't get any penalties himself, because we know these drivers like to cut those corners to optimize as much pace as possible. We know this. We're all racers here. We're gonna take that risk. And within doing so, what warnings do they have? Are they on warning 1? Are they on warning 2? I'm going to ask a question, George. Can you check that for me? Because if you go and race director, it'll tell you. And see where the position of these other two are. Because Thomas Gal has been pushing. He's got no ERS left. We know he's been on the hunt to try and, get back into this race. And that has worked a charm for him. In doing so, he now has nothing left to fight with, and so does Tripkov, actually. He's got flashing red lights at the rear, so that's going to cost him a lot.
I've got some news for you here. Tripkov is currently driving God's perfect race.
Oh, wow.
He hasn't changed his front wing. He hasn't got any warnings. Thomas Gal has 2 warnings, so is 1 off of a 3-second time penalty. Obviously, Menno has already got his 3-second time penalty. It is just looking like it's going to come up peachy here for Jane Tripkov.
Who doesn't like a peachy race like that? That is brilliant for the for Tripkov. And if he can just maintain it as well, that'll be brilliantly well done, as we might be seeing the first of the races. But yellow flag, it's going to be Calafrucius into the wall, and that's lost him a couple of positions. And then Rishan, who is racing again, has gone and overtaken him.
He's in the barriers. He's in the barriers again. It's going to be tough to try and make up anything or get back round to the pits with no front wing when you lose it on the first corner. Of course, your braking performance is hampered. Everything is hampered, really, with no front wing. He's going to end up being a bit of a roadblock to those behind him, too. Jirofu, who's trying to make up some time, is just going to get Karafalidis here. Thankfully, Karafalidis pulls over and just lets him go. But for that is going to be pretty much the end of Karafalidis' race. It's come too late in the day for anything to go happening, and that is Rainbow now diving into the pits.
Yeah, I literally thought that was somebody overtaking. Switch back to him and bang, and next thing you know, he's into the pits. So what is he actually going for the softs? I'm going to quickly look at the screening. No, he's going mediums. But
he's going to have a lot of pace on those mediums because he knows now that he doesn't have to make them last. He can just go and blast those mediums. He had great pace, by the way, on that hard stint. Really, really impressive. He didn't exactly get reeled in by Menno. That was a good, handful of laps it took for him to get caught up there. And as such now, in P8, on the mediums, nearly 4 seconds behind Patrick Hadler on 10-lap-old hards. Once those mediums are activated, he will be moving. In fact, I dare say he'll be schmoving up the field.
Yeah, and he's gained 2 positions in doing so. From the get-go, he was in P10. He's now in P8. Rainbow is looking to get points in this race.
Been really impressive, actually, from Rainbow. Raced really maturely, did his own thing, was not affected by anybody else around him, no one pressuring him. He managed to get to the front of that little group that was forming in the mid-pack, managed to get to the front, did his own thing, cleared off, and has now got himself up into P8. and has a huge amount of potential here to steal away a few more positions. I mean, let's just look at the tyre life of those in front of him. Within 7 seconds, he can get himself up into P5 if he races this one well. He is on fresh mediums, let me remind you, against people who are on 11-lap-old hards, 12-lap-old hards, and 12-lap-old mediums further up. But he has just, unfortunately, enlisted himself a 3-second time penalty. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether he's crashed because he just seemed to let Roshan by there. I'm not quite sure what's happened, but all the hype that we were starting to build up seems to have just been very quickly snuffed out.
Yeah, and I'm just watching him now. Has he sustained damage?
Doesn't look like it.
Let's have a look. You know, he's holding the corners correctly. There's no major clear understeer or problems. No idea. No
Odd.
idea.
Particularly peculiar. Either way, he still has a chance to make positions up. He's got 13 laps to just go and drive as fast as he can on those medium tyres. He can definitely get a 3-second buffer upwards of Laminen. I'm pretty sure if he can make it that far. Either way, whatever time he can gain, whatever positions he can gain, will be good for his hopes. But it seems that he's got to have something going on here because he's losing time to Roshan, who's on 14-lap-old hard tyres. So there has to be some kind of issue. Rainbow into the pits, some kind of issue. He's retired from the session. That's really sad because he raced a really fantastic race up until that point. That's really upsetting to see.
It is disappointing, but once again, back to what I've said, it takes a millisecond of concentration to go, and that's your race done.
Yeah.
And it has taken another victim to this track, and Rainbow, who was looking to gain his first points of the session, will have yet another DNF on the board, but this time a DNF that definitely was not deserved, for sure. But we focus our attention back up to... Actually, I'm going to focus onto P7 as Hadler is probably extremely close. He looks into Nouvelle Chicane, decides he can't make it, but he is the closest driver to make the second on-track overtake. I think without the driver ahead having a problem. If he could stick close through the swimming pool chicane, Raskas could be an opportunity. He looks... but no score. He is almost shoving the Alfa Romeo of Lamin, who is our championship leader. He is looking for anything he can to get past the Alfa Romeo. And you can see Lamin having to defend into Sandevot of all places. Not like I say, it is an overtaking opportunity, but it's not your strongest. And Lamin is under real threat here. Look how close Hadler is. He could make a move down the inside. He's going to push Laminen to the inside of the hairpin. He's going to try and stick this round the outside. Hadler going for it.
Oh, no.
It is a lot of contact and pushing and shoving. He will get the position, but stewarding will say no. And Laminen is trying to fight back. As Roshan is going to fight with it. Give me a camera angle, please. There we go, Roshan trying to get what he can. And the Mercedes diving down the inside. There's action finally in Monaco. As Roshan's lost his front wing. And Laminen's going to hold his position. But the Mercedes has jumped up one. But I don't think this is over. I think the Mercedes might have enough pace because there's got to be damage onto the Alfa Romeo of Laminen. So, and Laminen's, he's gone ghosted mode. He's dropped back in, so he's in menu for a 2 seconds, which is going to allow the Mercedes driver to try and get up the rear end of the Alfa Romeo, and he's looking anywhere he can go. He's trying to look up the curvy straight, but it's not going to be anything there, as the Alfa Romeo does not have any ERS. So it's going to be the hotel hairpin if he's going to make the move. No, not just yet into the outside. Here we go. He's got so much good traction down the inside. No. All right, it's going to be Nouvelle Chicane. And again, the vehicle keeps ghosting. So clearly Laminen is in that menu, not happy with something. He is clearly upset, and the Mercedes driver is going to go for it. It's going to be the overtake into the Nouvelle Chicane, forces the Alfa Romeo to go wide. He's going to hold it through to back. He finally gets it. The Mercedes driver is ahead of the championship leader.
What a horrible few laps for Laminen. He's just been beaten up on repeat, burned all of his battery to try and defend from that, but in the end gets a 3-second time penalty. His tyres are absolutely cooked. They are 15 laps old, those mediums. 15 laps. He is just going to get baked on now, probably by everybody ahead of him. They're just going to gap him. His race won't get any worse because Molnair is 23 seconds back, but Christ on a bike, that is a tough pill to swallow for Laminen. What was looking to be a great race ended up going weird early with a very early pit stop onto the mediums. I don't know what he's going to try and do for the rest of this race. I don't think these mediums will make it to the end in any kind of reasonable shape. And as such, he's just going to sit down in 8th position, your championship leader, scoring very few points today. Back at the front of the field, though, Tomas Gal picked up that 3-second time penalty I was alluding to earlier that he was only 1 warning off of. Tripkov now has also picked up his first and second warning on this lap as well. So he is not out of the woods yet. He needs now 8 clean laps in order to guarantee himself this race victory. But if he wants to carry on pushing to make sure he stays within that 3 seconds, he's putting himself at risk of getting 1 penalty of his own.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look on the standings and seeing what would happen. Thomas Gal, so it'd be Tripkov. So the championship, it's going to shape things up a little bit. Tripkov hasn't scored a point as of yet. And talking of not scoring points, I've just realised Tripkov is looking to win this race from not scoring in, and I will quote, in Bahrain, Netherlands, into, what was the first track? I can't, my image is
Barcelona?
terrible. Barcelona, yeah, Barcelona, Bahrain, Netherlands, Canada, scoring 0 points Tripkov has. Tripkov is about to win a race, and he's going to jump all the way, so he's got no points, 36, take plus 25, that will put him roughly in the marks of P6.
Oh, we've had another Roshan disconnection, unfortunately, just as he gets into P9, so that's not going to make it fun for anybody here. But as it is, at the moment, yeah, you're right, Jane Tripkov having a really, really lovely performance here. Hasn't really put a foot wrong. He's put a couple of wheels over the track limit so far, but not enough to elicit a penalty. He's on his final warning before he gets those 3 seconds added to his time. At the moment, if he can maintain a 3-second gap to Menno in front, he will snatch this race victory. It is definitely fair to say that Tripkov hasn't been the fastest driver on the track today, but he has been the cleanest. He has kept his nose out of trouble, hasn't had to do any front wing changes. Up until a few laps ago, had no warnings for track limits whatsoever, and now as the tyres are starting to get a little bit more worn, it's all coming into Tripkov's hands. He's got 20 lap old tyres behind him on Gal, and he's got 19 lap old boots on Menno in front of him. He is the youngest tyre life of these 3 front runners. His is 17 laps old, will have 2 more laps of extra grip than Menno, and unfortunately the only thing to compensate for that Menno has that he doesn't is battery.
Yeah, and to be honest, if I was Tripkov, just to be safe and sorry, I'd want to close up to Menno. Try and make sure that you are, you know, not only the fact that he's coming close to that 3-second mark, he's about halfway within his buffer, but close up the gap in case he makes the mistake and then he can make a pounce. But he is, as you mentioned, no ERS on him, so he can't really close up onto the Alpine driver ahead, and Menno holding his ground. And I'm just checking where Menno is on the championship. He's currently P10. He got 10 points. He was 3rd last weekend in Canada, and that's the only points he's had. Only points he has scored. So there is going to be a lot of chop and change this championship for sure.
Indeed, lots of chopping, lots of changing, but hopefully not lots of chopping the exits and entrances off corners for Tripkov. He just needs to keep it clean now. There is a fine line, though, you see. If he wants to push, he obviously exponentially increases the risk of him making that mistake. Menno is going to do everything that he can to make sure that that pressure to make that 3-second gap a possibility is exerted. And then if he does, then he might force the mistake from Tripkov. But the difficulty here is that Tripkov wants to just hold on for as long as possible, making no mistakes, keeping everything as clean as he can without losing too much time. But the unfortunate reality of things here, Reese, is that he is losing time. Last lap alone, he lost 0.3 of a second to Menno, and on that pace, he would not win this race because the 3-second gap would open up.
Yeah.
Now, whether the tyres come into it at the end for Menno, who knows? Who can only say? But for the time being, Tripkov is in a weird little predicament, a very strange conundrum. Does he push, risk a penalty, or does he just take it easy and do what he can to maintain that gap? He's got barely any battery, which is where Menno holds the advantage. It's 2% at the moment for Tripkov. Menno, 16%.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Nage as well. P4 right now. You know, the driver has not been... He's you know, we've been seeing his teammate more, Milan Meyer. We've been seeing him fighting away, being at the front, point of conversation. Nage really not being the point of conversation, only scoring 2 points in Bahrain. Now look at him, P4, trying to battle it out, and he's been very close to Gale, Thomas Gale, for majority, well, actually for the latter stage of this race. So he's trying to see an opportunity, and he's got a bit more battery than Thomas Gale as well. So he's waiting for his opportunity to pounce and make a move. As did I just see another overtake? Yeah, it's Milan Meyer making the overtake.
I think the unfortunate thing there is that Andre Molnar is not actually in the session.
Ah, okay. Back to the front. No one cares about
that. As it is, though, yes, you are right. Ispan Nage has been driving a good race thus far. He is only 0.4 of a second behind, but we are getting to that point now where Nage's tyres are going to be looking worse for wear. He's on the mediums. He has had them on for 17 laps, and yet still he is holding close to Tomas Gau. And it is going to get riskier and riskier as these tyres start to go off. I'd love to know what percentage they were on, because right now he needs to keep them in as good a check as he can do. There is a possibility that he could inherit a podium here if he can force a mistake out of Gau.
Oh, he's getting aggressive. That's an aggressive
and make the
line
overtake.
from
Here we go.
Nage.
Here we go. Is he going to make the overtake?
No, ERS is not turned on, so he's not doing it here. I think he's waiting for the Nouvelle chicane. As there, he just used a bit of ERS, only a little dab, but he's waiting and picking for his moment really to pounce. And if he takes another aggressive line like he did prior, he maybe could go for it. He's warming up. He's warming up now. And there's the mistake from Gale as he looked to try and cover the inside, but the power of these cars are too strong, and Nage, with no grip on those tires, wasn't able to hold himself into the hotel hairpin.
I think he's too far back here.
He is way too far back. He's not going to be able to do anything unless he had a full battery, but he does not. He does not have that much charge. Only 14%. That's going to rise up to 16 as he comes through the chicane and through to back.
I think the thing here for Nagi is that he needs to put a good lap together now. He needs to close up to that rear wing of Tomas Gau. Of course, with the assistance of DRS, he will be able to do so up through this front straight. The only DRS straight, one of the shortest DRS straights on the calendar. And as such, he's now going to have to try and get as close as he can. But he's suffering, so obviously suffering out of those tricky traction zones. Bottom of the hill. Enter Anthony Nose. It's just one of those things where he's really struggling now on these 19-lap-old medium tyres. They aren't giving him the same amount of grip that Tomas Gau's hards are. And that little ERS advantage that was once possessed is now gone too. He has got now less battery than Tomas Gau. So he has to have an opportunity, and it needs to come very, very soon because these tyres are fading, his battery is fading, and his chance of snatching this podium away from the AlphaTauri is fading too.
Yeah, and I want to make a very quick note. This race has been more interesting than we thought. And Tripkov has put himself back into the 1.6 second mark, so he's closed down. He's decided, you know what? I do need to put my foot down ever so slightly just to be safe than sorry. And he's not been making the mistakes. I've probably cursed it now, but he's not been making mistakes to cause any penalties as of yet. He's got a few more laps to go to stick behind Menno, but he will claim as this moment first place off Menno, who will drop down to second.
And I've got to say, watching him from on board at the moment, he is leaving a lot of margin in some of these corners where there are opportunities for understeering into walls or opportunities for clipping the inside. He is staying clear, a bit wide of a lot of apexes here, not taking too many risks. trying to maximize his entry to sacrifice his exit a little bit. And I think we're at that point as well for Menno here, where his tyres that are 25 laps old are just feeling the pain, the real struggle, especially on the rear where the traction is so limited, because at the moment that is where Tripkov is making the time up. Now the real question here is how much margin does he want to leave on the inside curbs of Nouvelle? Quite a bit actually by comparison, and on the inside of Swimming Pool. Those are the two big areas on this track where you're likely to pick up track limits penalties. Quite a bit of margin there. Not going to hit it too tight to the wall. Loads of margin on the Swimming Pool chicane. He's just got more pace in these tyres right now. More ability under braking, more ability under traction, and now back in DRS. You got to say, with only one more time around this Monaco Monte Carlo street circuit, he has got this race win in the bag, barring any kind of mistake. Jane Tripkov, from nowhere in the championship, from no points scored, from mistakes weeks in, weeks out, plaguing his season so far in the Haas, is surely less than a lap away from taking his maiden PSGL Tier 4 victory. What a drive this has been from Tripkov. What a drive to keep those tyres good, to keep that nose clean, and to keep those penalties far, far away. He has outclassed his teammate Sven Schumacher for the first time this season. Schumacher will come home in 5th by the looks of things. And this has been an absolute clinic, a masterclass from Tripkov. Menno has driven exceptionally well apart from that penalty, but unfortunately it won't be his day on the streets of Monte Carlo. It's looking like it's going to be Tripkov's. He's got one more run of the invalidation gauntlet to go, keeps it very clean, takes a little bit of risk, but all is well and good as Tripkov rounds into Raskas, pulls it through Anthony Nose, and will cross the line to become a race winner in PSGL. Tripkov wins the Monaco Grand Prix.
And what a well-deserved win for Tripkov. A masterclass drive of how to keep things safe. Then, sorry, 2 risks he took on the same lap, and that was all. Everything was clean, calm. He even decided to stay out later to have those fresher tyres to close up to Menno at the very end of the race to ensure that he had the 3 seconds, even though he was comfortably in. A brilliant drive, and we can't rule out Menno. Menno did put on a masterclass drive to hold that position. You know, unfortunately, Roshan having the disconnect meant that he's dropped all the way down to P8, but a brilliant recovery drive from Roshan, who dropped all the way down to 15th. He went to 15th, and Roshan's back up to P8, so well done to Roshan for that, but Menno taking away and making sure that the official first place when crossing the line was his, but again, the risk and reward was too great and cost him dearly.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, it was a good race, all things considered. You know, lots of stuff going on. Laminen managed to make it 26 laps on the medium tyres, but as such, it really did put him out of the race entirely. Practically came home as the back marker of the field, really. And for your championship leader, I don't think that's going to keep him in the lead of the championship for very long if he continues on with race performances like that. A blip on the radar, potentially, but Gal continues to be strong. Gal continues to be a proven contender. The Hungarian brings it home in P3, with Istvan Nagy outperforming his teammate for the first time this season in P4. Sven Schumacher, the Dutchman, comes home in 5th, with Patrick Hadler, Girofu, and Rishan, with Thomas Laminen in P9. Milan Mayer rounds out the top 10 in P10. As for Andre Molnar, not the weekend he would have wanted. That's P11 for him. Karafalidis and the rest of the boys on the DNF train, all that follow below.
Yeah, and it is definitely been an interesting Monaco, not one that I really expected to happen, but I'm kind of glad it did happen, because it meant that we had some form of entertainment instead of it being a case of grabbing our pillows, because actually I chucked my duvet away. Didn't need it. Did not need it today.
Didn't need it. It was a good race in the end, all things considered. There were a couple of lullaby moments in it, but you got to tip your hat to Jane Tripkov today. What a performance from 4th place on the grid, from nowhere in the championship, from no recent form to a race win. What a great session for him. What a great day. He's going to be happy and hopefully is going to take that confidence into the next round of PSGL, which I'm not totally sure off the top of my head where it is, so I'll bring up the calendar and check.
Great
it's Silverstone.
Yeah. And what a
Great.
track that's going to be, because we all know that Silverstone's one of those tracks where it's an all-round, everybody's got a chance at it, because it tests all abilities of the driver and the car.
Yeah.
And it poses so much overtaking opportunity in the race. So I look forward to how that happens. Of course, if you are looking for action, you want more, you're hungry for more, I believe it's Tuesday we've got more action, which will be the PlayStation side of things. So stay tuned for that. Those guys are very talented within themselves, and you know, have a little dabble look in there, and damn is all I can say. But if you want to switch over, there are some more races happening right now. We've got currently, I believe, tier 3 and 5 happening,
6
and 6 as well, happening right now. So do switch over to those channels as well if you want more action. But any last words from you, George?
No, I'm all good. Thank you very much.
No
all good here. No more to say apart from congratulations to Tritkov for his race win today.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega, proudly supporting PSGL.